This dirty, scratched Washington quarter might look like it belongs in a parking meter, but one of these ugly coins has sold for over $100,000, and the crazy part is, most people would have spent it without a second thought. Most people would glance at a 1993 Washington quarter with a P mint mark and think it's just ordinary pocket change, something you'd use for a vending machine or toss into a jar without a second thought. And honestly, most of them are only worth 25 cents. But here's where it gets interesting: a small number of these coins, especially the ones that look worn, scratched, or even slightly damaged, can quietly carry a value that shocks even experienced collectors. Picture this. You're digging through an old drawer, maybe sorting through coins you've saved over the years. You come across a 1993 quarter. It's not shiny. It's not perfect. In fact, it looks a little rough around the edges. Most people would dismiss it immediately. But that's exactly where the opportunity hides. The first thing you need to notice is that tiny P mint mark on the front of the coin, just to the right of George Washington's ponytail. That P means it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. Millions were made, but not all of them came out perfect. Now here's the secret that most people never learn. Coins are mass-produced, and sometimes mistakes slip through. These mistakes, called errors, are what can turn a common quarter into something truly valuable. And the 1993 P Washington quarter is known among collectors for a few specific types of errors that can be worth serious money. One of the biggest things to look for is something called a doubled die. This is when parts of the design, especially the lettering, appear slightly doubled or shadowed. You might notice it in the word Liberty or In God We Trust. To the naked eye, it might just look a little blurry. But to a collector, that blur can mean big value. Some of these doubled die quarters have sold for hundreds, even thousands of dollars, depending on how clear the doubling is. Another clue hiding in plain sight is an off-center strike. This is when the coin wasn't perfectly aligned when it was stamped. If part of the design is missing or pushed toward one side, don't assume it's just damage. That kind of mistake can actually increase the value dramatically. Even a small off-center error can turn a 25-cent coin into something worth $50, $100, or more. Now let's talk about something that surprises a lot of people: condition isn't everything. Yes, shiny coins can be valuable, but with error coins, even ones that look worn or slightly beat up can still carry serious value. That's why so many valuable coins get overlooked. People assume ugly means worthless. In reality, sometimes it means rare. There's also something called a clipped planchet. This is when a portion of the coin is literally missing, like a small bite was taken out of it. It might look damaged at first glance, but if the edges are smooth and curved in a natural way, it could actually be a mint error. These types of 1993 P quarters have been known to sell for well over $100 depending on the size and shape of the clip. And here's another detail most people never check: the edge of the coin. A normal quarter has a reeded edge, those tiny grooves all the way around. But if you ever find one that looks smooth or partially missing those ridges, it could be a striking error. Again, something that looks like damage, but could actually mean value. Now imagine this. Two quarters sitting side by side. Both from 1993. Both with a P mint mark. One gets spent on a cup of coffee. The other gets sold to a collector for hundreds of dollars. The difference? Just a few tiny details that most people never notice. And that's what makes coin collecting so exciting. It's not about having perfect coins. It's about knowing what to look for. The small clues. The hidden mistakes. The things everyone else ignores. So the next time you come across a 1993 Washington quarter, don't just glance at it and move on. Take a closer look. Check the lettering. Look at the edges. Notice the alignment. Because that ordinary coin in your hand might not be ordinary at all. And here's the truth, there are still valuable ones out there, hiding in circulation, waiting for someone to recognize them before they disappear forever into collections. Next up, coin. At first glance, a 1992 Washington quarter with a D mint mark looks like nothing special. Just another coin that's been passed from hand to hand for decades. It's the kind of quarter most people wouldn't even bother picking up if they saw it on the ground. But here's where things take a surprising turn. Some of these worn, scratched, and overlooked 1992 D quarters have sold for hundreds, and in rare cases, even more, simply because of tiny details most people never notice. Now imagine this. You're going through a handful of old change. Maybe it's been sitting in a jar for years. You pull out a 1992 quarter. It's dull. It's got scratches. The shine is long gone. Your first instinct might be to toss it aside. But that's exactly how valuable coins slip through people's fingers every single day. The first thing you want to check is that small D mint mark right on the front of the coin near Washington's ponytail. That mark tells you it was made at the Denver Mint. Just like Philadelphia, Denver produced millions of quarters that year, but not all of them came out the same. Here's the hidden truth. Even in a year with massive production, mistakes still happen. And those mistakes are where the real money is. One of the most exciting things to look for on a 1992 D quarter is doubling in the design. This isn't the kind of doubling that looks obvious at first glance. It's subtle. You might notice it in the letters of Liberty or In God We Trust. Sometimes it looks like a slight shadow or a thickening of the letters. Most people assume it's just wear or damage, but in reality, it could be a double die error. And collectors love these. Depending on how strong and visible the doubling is, a coin like this can jump from 25 cents to $100, $300, or even higher. Another clue hiding in plain sight is something called a die crack. Over time, the metal dies used to strike coins begin to wear out and develop tiny cracks. When that happens, those cracks transfer onto the coin itself as raised lines. To the average person, it might look like a scratch or defect. But if that line looks raised instead of carved in, it could be a genuine mint error. Some collectors actively hunt for these because each one is unique, almost like a fingerprint from the minting process. Now let's talk about off-center strikes again, because yes, even the 1992 D quarter can show this kind of error. If the design looks shifted, with part of the coin missing or blank, don't assume it's just damaged. Even a slight off-center strike can bring in serious money. The more dramatic the shift, the more collectors are willing to pay. There's also something called a weak strike. This happens when the coin isn't struck with enough pressure, leaving parts of the design looking faded or incomplete. You might see Washington's hair looking unusually flat, or parts of the eagle on the back lacking detail. Most people think it's just wear, but if the rest of the coin doesn't show heavy circulation, that weakness could actually be a minting flaw. And once again, that can add value. Here's something else that often gets overlooked: the rim of the coin. Take a close look around the edges. If the rim looks uneven, thicker in some places, or thinner in others, it might not be damage. It could be the result of a misaligned die during the striking process. These subtle differences can make a coin stand out to collectors who know exactly what they're looking for. Now picture two people holding the exact same coin. One sees a beat-up quarter worth 25 cents. The other sees a potential collector's piece worth hundreds. The difference isn't luck. It's awareness. And here's what makes this even more exciting: coins like the 1992 D quarter are still out there. They're not locked away in museums. They're not impossible to find. They're sitting in jars, drawers, old wallets, and yes, even in circulation today. But the window to find them is shrinking as more people start paying attention. So the next time you come across a 1992 Washington quarter with that D mint mark, don't rush past it. Hold it up to the light. Tilt it. Look closely at the letters, the edges, the details. Because what looks like damage to most people could actually be the very thing that makes it valuable. Next coin. A 1991 Washington quarter with a P mint mark might be one of the most overlooked coins out there, and that's exactly why some of them slip through the cracks and end up being worth far more than anyone expects. Think about it. This is the kind of coin people barely even glance at. It's been around for decades, passed through thousands of hands, dropped, scratched, worn down. By now, most of these coins look tired, almost invisible. And that's the danger, because when a valuable one shows up, it often gets ignored or spent without a second thought. But here's where things get interesting. That small P mint mark tells you it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. And while millions were produced in 1991, not all of them came out perfectly. In fact, some of the most valuable examples are the ones that don't look perfect at all. Let's start with one of the biggest hidden clues: doubling. Now, this isn't the kind of doubling that jumps out at you right away. It's subtle. You might notice the letters in Liberty looking slightly thicker than usual, or the words "In God We Trust" appearing a little blurry, almost like there's a shadow behind them. Most people would assume it's just wear or poor condition. But in some cases, that doubling is actually a minting error. And when it is, collectors take notice. Even a light doubled die effect on a 1991 P quarter can push its value into the hundreds of dollars. Stronger examples? They can go even higher, especially when authenticated. Now here's something most people completely overlook: die deterioration. Over time, the dies used to strike coins begin to wear down. When that happens, the details on the coin start to look stretched, distorted, or slightly uneven. Washington's face might look softer than usual. The eagle on the back might lack sharp detail. It's easy to dismiss this as a worn-out coin, but in some cases, it's actually a sign of a late-stage die strike. And collectors who specialize in these variations are willing to pay for them. Another powerful clue is a misaligned die. This is when the front and back of the coin don't line up perfectly. If you flip the coin and notice that the reverse design is slightly rotated instead of perfectly straight, you might be holding something special. These rotated die errors are subtle, but they can significantly increase value depending on how far off the alignment is. Now let's talk about something that can really catch people off guard: partial color errors. This happens when the coin isn't fully held in place during striking, causing the edge to look unusual. Maybe part of it appears smooth instead of fully ridged. Maybe the shape looks slightly off. To most people, it just looks damaged. But to a collector, that kind of flaw can be incredibly interesting and valuable. And here's another detail you don't want to miss: the overall look of the coin. Sometimes, a 1991p quarter will have an unusual surface texture. It might appear grainy, slightly rough, or uneven in color. While some of this can come from circulation, certain textures can actually be linked to minting issues like improper metal mixing or striking conditions. Again, things that look like flaws, but can actually be hidden value. Now imagine this scenario. You're holding a handful of quarters. One of them is a 1991p. It looks dull, maybe even a little beat up. You almost toss it aside. But then you pause. You take a closer look. You notice something slightly off about the lettering, the alignment, the edge. That moment of curiosity could be the difference between spending that coin or discovering something worth far more. Because here's the truth, valuable coins don't always look valuable. In fact, some of the most valuable ones look exactly like the coins people ignore every day. And the 1991p Washington quarter is a perfect example of that hidden potential. It's not rare in general, but the right variation, the right error, the right tiny detail, can turn it into something collectors are actively searching for. So the next time you see a 1991 quarter with that P mint mark, don't rush past it. Slow down. Study it. Look at the details most people miss. Because that ordinary-looking coin in your hand might be carrying a story and a value that's anything but ordinary. And once you start spotting these hidden clues, every coin you find becomes a new opportunity.